Free your mind.
A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome aboard. Welcome to another edition of the Pan-African Pyramid Show here at Fairway Hotel. This is the People's Pan-African Parliament, and we are discussing what lessons does Africa pick from the Senegalese democratic political transition that took place a few days ago. We all know that Senegal actually went to election, and the person who won the election is an opposition leader. Ladies and gentlemen, Faye was released from prison less than 2 weeks before the March 24th election, along with the popular opposition figure and mentor Ousmane Sonko, following a political amnesty announced by outgoing President Macky Sall. It is the former tax inspector's first time in elected office. The election tested Senegal's reputation as a stable democracy in West Africa, a region that has experienced coups and attempted coups. It followed months of unrest ignited by the arrests last year of Sonko and Faye, and concerns that the president would actually seek a third term in office despite constitutional term limits. Rights groups said dozens were killed in the protests and about 1,000 people were jailed. Faye, 44 years old, campaigned on promises to clean up corruption and better manage the country's natural resources. His victory was seen as reflecting the will of young people frustrated with widespread unemployment and former colonial ruler France, seen by critics to be using its relationship with Senegal to enrich itself. Such frustrations are common across many countries in Africa, home to the world's youngest population, where a number of leaders have clung to power for decades. In his first speech as president-elect, Faye promised to fight corruption and reform the economy. A practicing Muslim from a small town, Faye has 2 wives, both of whom were present on Tuesday ahead of the election. He released a declaration, a practicing Muslim from a small town, Faye, has 2 wives, both of whom were present on Tuesday during his inauguration as president of Senegal. Ahead of the election, he released a declaration of his assets to show transparency and called on other candidates to do the same. It listed a home in Dakar and land outside the capital and in his hometown. His bank accounts totaled roughly around $6,600. The new president was little known until Sonko, a popular opposition figure who came third in the previous election in 2019, named him to run in his place after being barred from the election for a prior conviction. While Sonko's future role in the new administration is unclear, he is expected to have a prominent role. Faye was arrested for alleged defamation last year, while Sonko faced a number of charges, including a prolonged legal battle that started when he was accused of rape in 2021. He was acquitted of the rape charges, but was convicted of corrupting youth and sentenced to 2 years in prison last summer. Sonko's supporters say his legal troubles were part of a government effort to derail his candidacy. While Sall eventually ruled out running for a third term, he then abruptly postponed the election in February with only weeks to go, triggering another wave of protests. That move was blocked by the country's constitutional court, and the election was eventually held weeks later in March. Ladies and gentlemen, we are trying to discuss whether there are lessons that the rest of Africa can pick from Senegal now that we have a new president from the opposition group. And the good thing is they are talking about France, and Comrade Le Safre is from France. Let's first listen to this clip from France.
France must make preparations for a definitive break and completely withdraw from Africa. Africa belongs to Africans, not France. She belongs to no one else, neither China, nor the United States, nor anyone else. It is high time for France to lift its knee off our neck and put an end to this unjust oppression. Centuries of misery, human trafficking, colonization, and neocolonization have caused immeasurable suffering. It's time to put an end to this cycle of oppression. It's high time for France to leave us alone. It's time for France to take a cue from its European neighbors and learn a valuable lesson in independence. Germany is the leading economic power in Europe, significantly surpassing France, which is ranked as the third or fourth largest economic power globally. Germany does not exploit any country, any colony. I can mention Italy, I can mention Spain, who had colonies before, but who do not exploit anyone, who do not interfere, who do not impose leaders in their former colonies. On what grounds does France believe it can continue to impose leaders on us and make choices on our behalf? This must come to an end. And the emerging Africa, the African youth, the African elites, and the African diaspora all stand united in saying no, it cannot continue any longer. France's hypocrisy is evident and pervasive in daily life.
That clip actually depicts France of a country that is actually exploiting Africa. I want to hear your views on whether you agree with what Mr. Sonko is saying and whether you also agree with your own country that what they are doing in Africa is correct or it is incorrect. And if it is incorrect, let's hear from the French national what your view would be on your own motherland.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. In West Africa, people are really exciting right now about the rise of that young man, 44 years old, new president, an opposite, as you said, a man that was in jail, and 2 weeks after, and the president of the country when he never ever been elected before to any other position. It took Senegal less than 24 hours after the closing of the polling station to get the outcome of the presidential elections, right?
Less than 24 hours.
24 hours, okay? This is the type of democratic performance that very, very few countries in the world can reach. Against all odds, the anti-system opposition candidate, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, designated successor of the leader of the African Patriot for Senegal for Works, Ethics and Fraternity, called PASDEF, Ousmane Sonko, emerged victorious outside of the first round. And we need to remember that in Senegal, it's a two-round elections, right? So that means that the PASDEF, so as I said, African Patriot of Senegal for Work, Ethics and Fraternity, PASDEF have won the majority of the votes in a really, really young country where medium age in Senegal is around early 20s, so 21 or 22. He has convinced most of the voters of this really, really strong democratic traditions of Senegal to choose the leaders that will implement the new phase that they want to take for history. Why does it matter? Why is it significant? And where does it come from? We're going to try to answer those questions. It is significant, I will say it right now. It is significant because imperialism doesn't know borders. So if a country that is under imperialism, that is trying to get out of imperialism, at this case in Senegal, getting back the sovereignty that has been taken by post-colonial regime that were in bed with France and also other countries. When this happened, when imperialism is trying to reach and capture the resources of one country for its own benefit, we should look at it. We should look at it because the very same people that try to capture the wealth of Senegal will one day look at Uganda to try to look for it. They one day look at Kenya and Zimbabwe. As we have said in this show before, divide and rule is the way imperialism functions. In this case, if we zoom to West Africa, what we see is a really clear situation that is also happening in a lot of places in the continent because it dates back from the 1990s and the Adjustment Structural Program. We have spoke about that before. The IMF and the World Bank impose conditions on politics against giving loans to the government. What does it mean? It means that President Faye, that just arrived in power, already have to reimburse the IMF $1.5 billion right now. As the new president, he has to reimburse that amount of money. And in order to get that loans, The IMF and the World Bank have asked him to reduce its expenditure, to stop spending money on militaries or educations or building roads or development, right? Which the IMF might have its own way of how Senegal should be run, but it should not impose it on Senegalese. Senegalese vote since 19th century, at the time where Uganda was still free from colonialism, from British colonialism, Senegal vote, and they have vote for their government. Whatever the government have delivered or not, that's another question, but Senegalese choose their destiny. But in the current economic situation, does Senegalese choose their destiny? Partly, only partly, because economic forces are at play. And that's why I want us to understand the history of how did those economic forces get to become so strong, get to play the politics. Because those economic forces are playing politics, not only in Senegal, but in Uganda, in South Africa, in France, and in the US. The economics is behind, the political economy behind the situation is what we are going to look at. So what do we see? We see that in the 1990s, many governments tried to implement adjustment structural programs and tried to implement neoliberal policy. What does that big word mean? It means that everything should be given to foreigners that come with money and that want to invest money. They are really free. We have seen that also in Uganda this week, where traders were complaining in Kampala Street that foreigners are not applying the same taxing system that they have to apply. Are they happy about it? They're not. Senegalese were not happy neither. Senegalese are not happy about the fact that in a neoliberal country, which I will explain later who has implemented that in Senegal, President Abdoulaye Wade and President Macky Sall, they have had great result. Great result. There's much more roads in Senegal right now. I was myself a student in Senegal before that. Right now, the airport is brand new, the stadium is brand new, everything is brand new.
You lived in Senegal also?
I studied politics in Senegal, yes.
You are playing politics in Senegal?
I didn't want to study politics in France. If you study African politics, you better study this from here.
And we are accusing you, France, of being in Senegal, managing the affairs of Senegal.
They manage
you are here.
They manage the economy because the economics model is there. So when Senegal opened its border for capital flow, what really it does is that it allows foreigners to regain control and to choose what the economy is. And of course, in that condition, because Senegal speaks French and Senegal used to be a French colony, of course, French investment will come first. But Chinese investments are there too. American investments are there too. And what matters at the end of the day for people that understand the political economy of neoliberalism is not so much the country where you come from. It's the fact that you come with money and that you want to leave the country with more money. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. So getting back to the political economy of Senegal, how did that start? How did it come about? It came about in 2001 with President Abdoulaye Wade. Since President Abdoulaye Wade, Senegal have experienced 5 to 6 to 7% GDP growth. In the last 15 years, Senegal have experienced 5% GDP growth in the last 50 years in a medium. So sometimes it was 7, 8, and obviously during COVID it was lower. But what does it mean is that they implemented the recipe of neoliberalism. They said, come with your money and invest in our country, and people did. People did invest in Senegal. Senegal developed. But did it develop for everyone? No. It developed only for a tiny national bourgeoisie connected to French interests and largely Western interests, right? No, not so much Chinese or Russian in Senegal, but rather Germans, French, and Americans. It developed a tiny group. That tiny group of people have made an astonishing amount of money. We can call them the 1%. The 1% richest Senegalese have get extremely rich outside of that growth. But the growth only benefited those that have capital, those that have skill, the urban youth that are skilled, that have been to university, that have been studying, they didn't benefit from it. So for the last 15 years, Senegalese life has not changed. For them, it has decreased. The price of everything has raised up. It's called inflation. The inflation have raised up. The price of things is up and up and up, as then right now, Dakar is the most expensive city in Africa. As we speak, you cannot find a taxi in Dakar that is cheaper than one in Uganda.
or in South Africa, or in Rwanda. So what does it mean? It means that the economic model that had been put in place 15 years ago is highly successful. It works really well for the few. It makes the state weak, so now the state cannot tell people what to do with their money and where to select it, but it made the people poor. It made the people poor, 99% of them poor, when the 1% got rich. The 1% got rich, the 99% get poor. So what happened is, Senegalese got tired of it. They got tired of it. And the same situation is happening and keep happening. The same situation is happening and keep happening. When you look at that GDP growth, what you see is a national bourgeoisie that is enriching himself and nothing else. A lot of people please that and think that this is a solution. If more money come in the country, people should get more money. It's called the rippling effect. That's what they think. The economics doesn't work like this. Senegal is proving it, but it's only one tiny portion of the impact of that imperialism all around the continent. And what do we see in Senegal? Is we observe a democratic solution. A solution that is not handled by a coup d'etat. A solution that is not handled by military coup. The military leaders of West Africa have raised up. I have wrote an article which you all check about the new generation of African leaders in Francophone Africa. In Francophone Africa, as we speak right now, leadership is really young. Burkina Faso, Mali, Guinea, Senegal, the leadership is really young. And they all understand that the problem is to recapture the economy. The problem is to recapture, to get sovereignty on the economy, because Senegal, as Ivory Coast, as Uganda, as many, have abandoned its economic sovereignty to give it to capitalists. Your economic sovereignty matter. It has weakened your political institutions all around.
In Abidjan, in Dakar, in Lomé, in Luanda, and in Johannesburg. In all those places, the national bourgeoisie is getting richer and richer every day. We see it with the fantastic 4x4. In Senegal, those 4x4 get so big that we used to call them the 8x8. The 8x8. Because they get so much money from that growth. They capture everything. They capture all the value that is made in the country. So in places like Senegal, in places like Abidjan, everywhere where neoliberalism has been implemented, foreigners are on top. And in the case of Senegal, foreigners are French. But the problem is not so much what nationality they hold, which passport they hold, is what do they do of their power? And why is it that foreigners become so powerful? Yeah, me in Uganda as a foreigner, am I powerful? Can I play the politics? No. But give me $1 million and suddenly I become more powerful than the traders of the street of Kampala. I become more powerful than all those malls that are there and established since 40 or 50 years. I get more advantage from Uganda than the Ugandan itself. How does that make sense? How does that make sense? It is what we call neoliberalism. It is the enemy. It is what we are fighting. It is the last stage of imperialism, as Kwame Nkrumah would have put it. It is the last stage. And for now, what we observe in Senegal, it's a democratic solution that Senegalese has understood the situation and said, no. We need our economic sovereignty back. We know it comes from the French. But they are not fooled. They don't believe that Chinese are going to do better things. They don't believe that Americans or Russians are going to do better. What they believe is that if we put them in competitions and we drive development, then we have a better chance. We have a better chance to achieve something. But the situation will not be achieved.
Will not change.
The situation will change only if there is a strong tackle on that current national bourgeoisie. And that's what Senegal has achieved.
Who are the bourgeoisie, Mr. Lissafri? Because for me, as a Senegalese, as an African, I think if bourgeoisies are exploiters, France is one of them. Now, in your explanation, you're showing as if France and Africa, we are the same, we are all being exploited.
The French, the bourgeoisie can be defined.
For me, no, you are the thieves. You're part of the bourgeoisie.
No, not. I wish I was part of the bourgeoisie. If I was part of the bourgeoisie.
Not you as a person, I know.
In every country you have a bourgeoisie. In
Senegal, in Africa, even here in Uganda, you know that we have just been trying to explore our oil in Albertan region. And France, through Total, came and said, we will not do this unless you do ABCD, unless you compensate the victims along the pipeline, unless you do this. Then they brought in LGBTQ issues. So why are they doing this? Because they want to exploit us.
Yes.
And that's why China is now coming in and saying, if anybody is giving you conditions for your oil, we are coming.
In every single country, you have proletarians and bourgeoisie. Every single country, Uganda, China, France, whatever imperialist or not, every single country has a bourgeoisie who owns the mean of production. So whatever that country produces is owned by a few amount of people. And who use those machines to produce? The proletarians, the workers. In today's world, how can we call them? In our case, those are urban youth. Those are the ones that produce the value. But who capture the value? The bourgeoisie. So every single country has a bourgeoisie that capture the wealth of its country. And in the current stage of imperialism, they have accumulated so much money that now they have to invest that money in other countries to continue to make money. Because the return rate are not as high as they used to be. So the French bourgeoisie have to go all around the world to figure out where is it that they can invest their money. A similar job that the Chinese bourgeoisie is doing. They cannot accumulate more wealth from where they come from, so they have to go somewhere else. They have to go somewhere else. They have to find money somewhere else. And that's what they do. And that's why the enemies is a common enemies. It's not a single, it's not just someone that hold a passport or a nationality. Because those people are literally in charge of the world economy as we speak. And what they want to do with it is to make more cash. And where is it that they can make more cash? In Africa, because Africa is not developed yet. So they can be the one developing in Southwest Asia or in Latin America. And all the time they come and they say, no, let us do it. Let us, the capitalists, do it. Because if I have $1 million in my bank account, that must mean I'm someone. That must mean I'm someone or I've done something good. This is lies again. Most of those capitalists receive the money from their parents. I was explaining to one of my students this week that 80% of the British families, of the wealthiest British families right now, 80% of the 100 richest family in the UK got their money at the time of slavery. And they just passed the money generation after generation after generation after generation. And all the time, the men that receive that capital have to find a way to fructify that capital, to make more money. There's no way to make more money in the UK for this man. What does he do? He try it in India. He try it in South Africa. He try it in Kenya or in Uganda. But I want to offer some solution. I want to offer some solutions because I think we all have understood that we live in a stage of imperialism where capitalists have, if you have money, basically whatever you come from, if you have money, you have a lot more power than if you're a normal educated person that follows morals. So we have understood the situation, but yet we don't really see solution. And Mr. Bissau Faye and Mr. Ousmane Sonko have offered really interesting solution that I think the youth might understand here. I will present three of them very quickly. Universal revenue, okay? Universal revenue, what does it mean? It means that from the age of 18, when you become an adult, according to the law, you receive money by the state, okay? So the state gives you enough money so you're outside of the poverty line. What that would mean in Uganda, that would mean something like, I don't know, 70,000 or 80,000 shillings per month that you receive on your mobile money. This is simple to do, simple to organize, and that will ensure every youth that have no job right now can still eat at the end of the day. It ensures dignity for the people. So universal basic income is universal revenue, call it the way you want. What we want is the state to give money to the people. Give money directly to the people so they don't suffer and they don't have to make the choice that poverty only offers, right? First thing. Second thing that is really important, when you come with money in this country, whatever in Uganda, whatever in Senegal, whatever in South Africa, when you come with money, you cannot live with that money. You leave that money here. That's what apartheid South Africa used to do. When the British and the French and the Germans used to come to develop apartheid South Africa, they could not send back the benefit wherever they wanted. Right now, when Total make benefits, because of course Total make benefits in Uganda, it can take everything out. In a system where you invest the benefit in the country that you make the benefit, your economy develop, right? So if Total make incredible amount of money in Uganda, good for them. Reinvest the money here.
But they should invest here.
Reinvest the money here. Don't send it to a bank account in Switzerland.
They're sending it to France.
Exactly. Don't send it to Switzerland or to Singapore or to develop other projects to make more money. No, keep it in the countries. That's the second solution. So first solution, universal basic income. Second solutions, putting some stop in the financial flows and making sure that the money remain inside the country. And then the last solution, I believe, is through education. The state needs to provide education on the important sectors, and I know that Uganda is doing that quite well. When there's new sector developed, like right now, the petroleum economy, we're training Ugandans to make sure that they can take the jobs, we have engineer for petroleum, we have everything that we need in terms of skill. So universal basic income, making sure that the money remains in the country when it comes in and doesn't leave as much as it wants, and make sure that education is on point for the youth. Thank you so much.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, and my dear colleagues in the House.
And we have an online following here.
And so many people on other platforms following us. The history of Senegal certainly does not fall far away from what happened in 1884-85. It is as a consequence of the colonial powers then sitting in Berlin and deciding to parcel out the African countries to themselves. And Senegal, like majority of the French West Africa, was parceled out and given to France. What followed was nothing but colonial rule with all its attendant effects. It was much later, in 1961, that Senegal gained independence, at least flag independence, because the rest is a very huge debate as to whether in 1961 actually Senegal became independent or not. So therefore, it is roughly 51, 52 or so years since Senegal gained the flag independence. And recently, what we witnessed was about the inauguration of the sixth president of Senegal, if not the fifth president of Senegal, democratically elected, if you wish, as per the dictates that were given to us by the colonial master upon his departure as the benchmark of democracy, and that is electoral democracy, that every after 4, 5, or 7 years, you go to polls, and whoever emerges victorious is declared the next president of that particular country, and that one that it is called democracy. So going by that, then we note that Senegal, unlike majority of her neighbors, has been carrying out democracy, electoral democracy, to the amazement of majority of African countries, because it is one country in the entire French West Africa that has not witnessed any coup d'etat. And just like Mark Sarr was riding on the popularity of the people who wish to see change in their country, and the same thing has this time around happened to our own Faye, whom you can, and other propagandists and political activists and analysts have called the proxy of Sonko. When you look at how they were progressing, probably you would forgive them for looking at him as the proxy of Sonko. We all know, or at least fairly, majority of us know the history of the opposition in Senegal, especially during the reign of Macky Sall and his main opponent, Sonko, who has been jailed a number of times, and all manner of criminal cases leveled against him, Some of them, of course, which the analysts say were simply framed for purposes of keeping him out of politics. Now, the question really is, as you have put it, Mr. Speaker, sir, that what are the lessons that we draw from the recently concluded elections in Senegal?
One lesson I'm learning from Senegal and the Ugandan politics is that we once had a candidate here who was jailed for allegedly raping somebody, and it's also happening in Senegalese politics.
the difference.
That's one lesson I'm learning.
So there will always be similarities, Mr. Speaker, sir. There will always be similarities in Ugandan politics, in African politics. And what is interesting is that even in other jurisprudences, other jurisdictions, not necessarily Africa, we are getting cases of the intolerance in politics. And politicians, especially those who come into government, wanting to turn it into a private enterprise. And we have seen it in Asia. In fact, it even happened in America because whatever Trump was thinking, there was an attempt, and I think the cases are going on against him as him attempting.
America is also copying from Africa.
Yeah, probably. You see, they were just being exposed and the media was covering them, but I don't think that it is the democracy they claim to be. But that's a debate for another day. Mr. Speaker, sir, permit me note the following, that we have got the young 44-year-old as the president, and therefore that marks the talking point that actually the young ones, it is not about, although of course I do present my position that it's not about biology, but ideology. So it doesn't matter really so much as your age.
The age.
But when you get a combination, because when you look at all the media houses, major media houses, and all the political analysts on the African continent, I was watching the Nigerian think tanks and majority of West African think tanks, and these analysts, they are all referring to Faye and his group as the Pan-Africanists. Now, if this is the crop of the leaders that we are having in Senegal, we learn a lesson, therefore, that the young ones have, he creates an impression that the young ones have come of age and they can take on the reins of government. It's not, because what has been happening on the African continent is that the youth have been captured by the old and they are used against each other. Because when you look at who break the peaceful protests, generally speaking, on the African continent, it is not the old ones. The old ones send the youth who brutalize the fellow young ones simply because they have been given some money, and therefore they take away their head. They don't come to the rallies. They don't come to give service to their countries with their heads. Instead, they do look at the element of money, and the money, which is in majority of the cases in the hands of the old politicians who are aged, and I have no problem with age because each of us will age anyway. But at the same time, we must recognize the fact that what has been happening, generally speaking, is that the old people have used the young people against each other, and that has been the trend.
And the young people have accepted to be used.
Unfortunately, simply because of the ideology, the civic levels, the civic awareness levels on the African continent are usually very low, and maybe deliberately so, because in the majority of the cases, the governments responsible in the day running of the day-to-day activities of their respective countries are not interested in a civically empowered youth, because they will begin asking disturbing questions. So we do learn that we can have, as an experience from Senegal, we can have the young ones, and who are taking up the reins of power, at least the little that we have seen. Let's not judge Faye so quickly now in the positive realm, but we must recognize the fact that the first impressions matter. And what we have heard Faye say with his group Sonko, and what we have his acceptance speech, and what he used to say on his campaigns is a true reflection that the biology has combined very well with the ideology. So we take a leaf, therefore, that next time these different African countries also, when they do bring in somebody, it should be, yes, young, but equally grounded ideologically. Mr. Speaker, sir, we notice, for instance, that when Faye is coming onto the inauguration, he proudly moves around with his wives. And the other media houses, or at least as we have always known, save the fact that he's a Muslim, but I think it goes deeper to signify the Africanness, the African culture, the pride the young man finds in his culture. He does not look at the two wives. He does not look at polygamy, if you want to call it that. He does not look at it as a curse. He does not want to project himself as somebody that having two wives is almost a crime. They say it's some sort of backwardness. But he brings out the true picture of the true African man, that you can have your two wives, or even more, and you will be happy, and you should not be judged in the lenses of religion, you should not be judged in the lenses of the Western culture, because all that we see, especially on the African continent, is that whatever you do, the lenses in which you are seen and the judgment passed against you is purely the eyes you are seen in the eyes and the lenses of the former colonial masters. If you don't, for instance, adhere to the tenets upon which they say this is civilization, then you will be described as uncivilized. But he has completely defied that. He proudly moves around with his two wives, even one who they say doesn't have a child. It doesn't matter. African traditional society recognizes women, and whether a woman has given birth or not, it still remains your wife. That beauty is something that we should look at and we should copy. Otherwise, the moment we go with what the white man has left behind, it is one signal way of making sure that we are depopulated, and consequently, we shall be few in numbers and captured. Mr. Speaker, sir. The Faye president-elect now has come with very strong promises. He promises agricultural revolution. We very well know that our cooperative advantage on the African continent, and according to the projections of the African Development Bank, by 2040, the projections are that the continent which is going to be the highest in terms of, the most productive in terms of agriculture, will be the richest continent. When you get a young president who promises agricultural revolution, and agriculture plus fishing being the backbone, and mining being the backbone of Senegal, then we have got a clear case of somebody who is getting it right. Mr. Speaker, sir. The other problem of Senegal, like in the majority of the French West Africa, has been the CFIA. CFIA has been the currency that the majority of the French West Africa uses. And when they attempted to change it to ECO, it was not with a lot of success, because there was a direct intervention of France. This time around, the Faye president has come up rapidly, and he has told whoever wants to hear that he is going to reform, if not get out completely of the currency that has been obtaining since the colonial days, post-colonial days in the majority of the French West Africa. And to me, that one is a revolution, because this very currency has been the biggest undoing of majority of the French West Africa. Remember, that we are riding against the tide of the Pact for Continuation of Colonialism. The Pact for Continuation of Colonialism is a policy where, among others, all the French West African countries which were colonized by France have to deposit half of their reserves in Paris and the central bank of France. And when they do, they must make an application to borrow the money from there. And when the application is accepted, then they also give you the terms on how you are going to pay back. And sometimes it is not accepted.
Pay back your own money.
They don't care. That's how it has been. And save for a few countries that have come up and they have completely refused that. Because Nigeria wanted to join the eco currency, it was kicked out, tax-free. And the rest of the countries that remained, the eco currency that was introduced is a watered down version of what they had actually envisaged. And when you get the young president, Faye, saying that I'm going to completely get rid of this currency, I'm going to make sure that the currency of Senegal is a currency that gives pride to the people who are using it and for the benefit of all my neighbors and our people here. Then you get confidence that probably going forward, we are going to have a true revolutionary leader in this particular country. Mr. Speaker, sir, also, France is throwing around congratulatory messages after listening to the incoming president's speech, not because they so much wish him well, but they want to gauge him. If he can be a friendly force going forward, they will have no problem with him. But if he keeps this stance, like he has retorted time and again, then they are going to make a way of undermining his leadership and making sure that they infiltrate him, bring in the agents to fail his leadership. They have done this all over Africa, and I don't think that my brother Faye is going to be an exception. We pray that the revolutionary spirits of the great grandfathers of the Nkwame Nkrumahs will prevail over his leadership and chase out the demonic spirits coming from France forever. Mr. Speaker, sir, there is the people resolve. We learn from the elections in Senegal that when you have got a consistent and resolved, determined spirit, you win. The people of Senegal, what they have gone through with the presidency they thought was democratic, that is Macky Sall, because he was riding on the shoulders of popular slogans like giving democracy back to the people, which unfortunately was failing. This time around, the Senegalese didn't want to suffer the fate like the rest of their neighbors have suffered. They wanted to remain a shining example in democracy, and they have achieved it. Also to note there is the independence of the organs of the country. The independent
judiciary.
The judiciary, but also there is the electoral commission. The electoral commission of Senegal, the council, the electoral council. They resolved and said, you are not going, you are the president, all right, but we are not going to accept you to push this election to a date that is not even known. They said this must go on. And the people resolved to continue on the streets shouting and making their case being known, has consequently led to the elections being held. I can assure you that this is not what Macky Sall expected. Because he didn't have the time. The time he was trying to buy was to make sure that he puts his own systems proper. The jailing.
He was actually bringing his son, remember?
Yeah, that too.
He was bringing his son.
So the jailing of
the time to bring his son.
Of these two, the Faye and the Sonko, was to ensure that the opposition is put in the oblivion. Therefore, we note and we must learn it as we must benchmark.
But before you note, I want you to now advise the Electoral Commission of Uganda. 2026 is just around the corner. Advise us now. advise the electoral
It
commission
becomes.
what they should do.
I hope they have been watching.
Yeah.
But it becomes a little bit of a challenge, especially in the majority of the African countries, to disappoint the appointing authority. But because in majority of, I haven't said that our own leadership here has prevailed over the electoral commission, but what we have seen, generally speaking, is that in a majority of the African countries and elsewhere, there is a tendency to rhyme with the appointing authorities' wishes. I hope the case of Senegal provides a very good learning example for the rest of us
To Uganda.
to make sure that we copy and paste if need be.
Let's begin from home, comrade.
I
I hope Senegal's electoral commission or electoral council gives a good example to where we are seated.
By the way, the electoral commission of Uganda is not that bad. It doesn't
I have
matter
not
really.
said. Have I said it's bad?
Yes.
I simply said good examples you pick them, bad examples you drop.
It's okay, and
This is something we can learn.
And that was-
Good.
and
I have
that-
not said they are bad. They are actually
that
very
is
good.
that is my point
Yeah,
also.
so we take a-
I'm saying that of course they are not they are prone to errors. Like any other electoral commission. I don't know about the influence peddling, if it may be coming from somewhere else. But what I know is that generally speaking, the case of electoral commission of Uganda, because we have got some people who have actually appealed, they go to their own private organizations, political parties, they are cheated from there, then they come as independent to electoral commission and they go through. And that is how the independent MPs in our parliament has been growing. Why? Because they find fairness in the electoral commission. And also at the same time, of course, you get people of the opposition who are going through the same system.
Okay.
I want to wind up Mr. Speaker, sir, by also looking at the inclusivity. When you look at, if you take, for instance, FAI as a proxy of Sonko, Sonko has been appointed the Prime Minister now. And I want to believe that they are not going to get greedy with power and start fighting amongst themselves. It's something that you should learn. Somebody else, after taking over power, would have completely forgotten him and even left him in prison. Some people do that. You see, it is not new.
Yeah.
At the same time, we are also looking at the promise that these
So
elections.
agreed on something.
Yes, absolutely. They agreed on something and I hope they achieve it, like they have achieved this victory. Then there is also the element of renegotiating all international contracts. I think this is very important because Africa is suffering mainly because of poorly framed and signed contracts. We find ourselves in a lot of, for instance, our power here in Uganda with ESCO has been claimed to be one of the most expensive, yet it's generated from our own water here. There is no reason as to why we should be paying heavily the way we pay for our own power here. Why do we do it? Because we do not negotiate properly and our patriotism levels and Pan-African levels in the majority of those people who are handling those contracts is nothing but shambolic. So I hope by Comrade Fai saying that he's going
the
to...
last statement is qualifiable, is correct, because I believe that these people don't lack negotiation abilities, but I think it is selfishness, because when you realize in their contracts, you find that they have a lot of kickbacks that they get from shambolic contracts that...
Actually, they don't stop at getting a one-off kickback. They even follow contracts which are already obtaining, and they make sure that as long as the contracts are still living, then they are also benefiting, whether they have gotten out of the system or not. But the way they frame the contracts, they keep benefiting. You don't get surprised if, for instance, in the power that you are paying for, somebody who negotiated and signed the contract is getting a kickback out of every unit that is a Ugandan is paying for. Mr. Speaker, sir, there was also promise for revamping employment opportunities. Because when you revamp the economy,
The
And
youth
you
are
bring
crying.
the youth on board, you bring the intellectuals on board, you bring the diaspora on board. Like FIRE has promised to create an inclusive and people to enjoy the Senegalese to enjoy themselves in their own country with whoever comes to do business or visit Senegal. Then you get a picture which is first class to show you that here is a man who has come up to change the dynamics in the country. But we have seen before, there are people, including Mark Sar, who came promising, but somehow, for whatever reasons, he has not delivered. We hope this time around that age plus the young age plus the ideological revolutionary ideals are going to propel FIRE and his team to push Senegal to greater heights. There is the element of democracy. We are aware that democracy, Mr. Speaker, is not merely given. And I think that is what the opposition in Senegal has managed to achieve. They have not just waited for democracy to be given. If, for instance, during the fighting of Idi Amin, Ugandans waited upon prayers which were being offered by the first evangelicals and what have you to materialize, and Amin dies. And actually, Amin died much later. He would not have ruled for only 80 years. But people had to take up arms, and if it includes taking up arms in whatever nature, a community which is brutalized, which is aggrieved, must use everything in its power to get rid of such a rotten system. I thank you so much.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
I want to talk about reforming the economy. I've heard from the new leaders of Senegal talking about reforming the economy, but I think this is a collective action. We have seen countries, several leaders like Muammar Gaddafi tried to do it alone, he failed. Leaders like Thomas Sankara, they tried to do it alone and they failed. I think it needs a collective action, uniting as African countries, as leaders, to bring about that change. Neither the oppressed nor the oppressors can bring about freedom of both, because neither the oppressed or the oppressor is free. So, Mr. Speaker, what I'm trying to mean here is that the bourgeoisie class in society that is created by our education system, which is again designed by the colonial master, won't be able to bring change to the Africans. In other words, we even need to work on our education system. Mr. Speaker, also want to talk about the issue of the young and the old. I think the young and the old in leadership in Africa doesn't matter a lot. What matters is that the willingness of the individuals to solve problems of the society. The ideology. It's what that matters.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
We are seeing the neighbors of Senegal, the Niger.
The topic says, are there lessons the rest of Africa can pick from Senegal?
Of course,
That's
a lot.
That's the topic.
A lot. Now, first of all, these other countries, the Niger, the Burkina Faso, the Guinea.
Guinea-Bissau.
Yes, which had a coup.
Mali.
That now we have seen in Senegal, it's not through a coup.
It's a democratic election.
But
challenging the status quo.
You get. So that means even in our own governments, in these other countries, we can have that way of democracy without a bloodshed. Because I'm pretty sure those coups costed people's lives. No matter we are seeing President Ibrahim Traoré doing good, but there are some lives that went. You get. So I want also to bring it back to Ugandan style. That Ugandans, let us stop thinking that it's only the old people who can be there. Ministers are old. This one is old. Also, the youth can do something. Let me talk about, he talked about that Colonel Muammar Gaddafi failed on a personal level. This man is the one who proposed the AU, African Union, to have a USA, United States of Africa. But most African countries disagreed with him. That's the actual fact.
the man tried collective energy, collective efforts to see that Africa is united. We become one. Today, USA is beating countries, not because USA is that powerful, it's just because they're united. There are many states in the US, it's just United States of America. They just united a lot of countries. Now, if African countries had taken on that step when Gaddafi was telling them, where could I have been? Now we are here in Uganda, they are trying to put economic integration. We have one East Africa. Now what if we had that one Africa? Now where would I have been? That means our leaders themselves, they have that kind of parasite sickness in them. So, also Senegal is teaching us a lot of things, that democracy can be a way to go than coups. That any person, as long as you have that heart of nationalism with you, you can take your country to the next level. These people of France, and we are looking at only France because it has been the colonial master mostly in Senegal and Western Africa. But we are leaving out these other countries. You know, those European countries have a game. If this one goes away, this one comes in. This one goes away, this one comes in. It's like they're entering their home. So we are chasing out France. Which person are we bringing in now? Because we shall chase out France, tomorrow we run to UK.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
This topic is an interesting topic when it comes to the concerns of the African political system. I think there are a couple of things that we need to really learn from the political system that has been established in Senegal and the democratic system. I think the first thing that we need to learn is to change our electoral commission system that we have been having all along. And of course, we should not expect any clear changes if at all we don't first of all change our system that we've been having before. And a system that a country like Uganda, of course, let's talk about a country like Uganda where we are, and give a comparison with a country like Senegal today. And also not to be very excited about the Senegal because, you know, it is still new. It is still a baby. He's still a newborn, and we still have a lot to expect from him. Of course, that will be the good and the bad part of it. But of course, we are happy that at least it is creating up a clear roadmap for all African countries to follow on. And if we really wake up as an African country, it will be a good start for us to know that at least the changes has to be there. We can also copy from Senegal. Issues of the age, like all my comrades talked about, it is nothing. Though at a certain point, each and every one of us will grow old, each and every one of us gets tired from our day-to-day duty, and at a certain point we need to hand over and take a break. So what I see from our African leaders, most of the African leaders, is most of them have lost the Pan-Africanism. They don't have it in them, and they are serving personal interest, not the interest of their people. If I try to remember one word from our former speaker, that was the late Jacob Olanya, who said leaders must try to work together with their local people, because they are the one who understand and they are the one who goes through all the challenges. Not you who goes and sits in a office somewhere, no. It is the people here to advise you. Yes, of course, your advisors should pick the interest of the local people to send it back to the upper offices. But of course, in Uganda here or in another country that are related to Uganda into its political system, you find this system are not functioning. So we really need to have a real democratic system. Because at the end of the day, we shall be here wasting our time debating about France, talking about the US as you know, being one of the guys trying to disorganize our economy. But these things, we are spoiling it ourselves. When you go to France to negotiate or to cut a deal, they don't force you to sign. It is out of your choice. You make a choice. to make this to sign this agreement. If the agreement is not okay with you, why don't you get back to your country and consult before you make the deal? Because at the end of the day, who is losing? I am losing, the citizen. You, the citizen, you are losing. Just like Comrade Dan said, at the end of the day, these people keep getting the tip out of it. Thank you very much.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
I'd like to thank you so much for being part of this debate. My name is Andrew Irumba Katusabe, your speaker. Until we meet again, I sign out, and please follow us on our social media platforms. Share our debates, like our YouTube channels, the Pan-African Pyramid, the Spy Uganda, and Detective UG. We're also on our WhatsApp, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. Please follow us on our social media platforms. We can actually take this debate every other day till it reaches the last person. Say now.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.